Format, or in this conversation, aspect ratio, really is all about your intended use. Now, in our times, that of course means digital, whether you're sharing stuff on social media or you've got commercial clients that are looking for different resolutions or aspect ratios, or you're putting stuff on your website in the gallery in the way that you want to present your work. And outside of digital, of course, we have print, and you can basically print in any type of crop that you can get paper for, anything you want. So print is another big part of why we put things into the crops or aspect ratios that we do. Now, I'll be just honest and transparent with you all. I've kind of struggled to make this video. I don't know if it's just being tired or if my brain is having a hard time wrapping around what I want to say about this topic. But I do feel like that we've kind of lost a bit of the art of foresight when we go out to take photographs today. And what I mean by that is that photography can be intentional and it can be reactive. It should be both. You go out with the intention to take photos and do your thing. And then on the other side, it's reactive because you don't necessarily know what's going to be there until you get there. Like, intentionality in photography can mean something as simple as like, hey, I'm going to do this portrait session with this person and we're going to do it at this location. And maybe I've been there before and I know what to expect. Maybe they're bringing this type of wardrobe and we've got a plan to do X, Y, and Z. I've studied up some poses. I've got some looks in mind and I've got all this stuff ready to go. And then you get there and you execute what you have planned. But then you also are throwing some other stuff there. You get inspired in the moment and you're making some things that you didn't intend to do. Like, I also think about photojournalists who go out to like a war zone and they have no idea what they're going to capture. They're just out there to document it. And that's the whole other side of the spectrum is, we're out there to create something, but you don't know what it's going to be. And it could be nothing. It could be a life-changing or world-changing image. So somewhere in all of this like mixed up philosophy, this maybe spectrum of intentionality to unpredictability, photography for us and every shoot that we do falls in there. Now, maybe it's just me, but I think it's real easy to be over prepared on one end and totally chaotic on the other and miss the shots, or not make your best work, which I think is really what our goal is when we go out to shoot. I've made a lot of videos over the last couple of years about my process, and especially regarding like preparation when I'm working on a project or traveling somewhere, to make the most of it. And I've been spending like days on Google Maps because I've got a pretty big trip coming up and I want to make sure I get my best stuff. But I'm also going into that trip knowing that there's going to be a lot of unpredictability along the way. And I'm sort of planning for that too and giving myself time to be spontaneous and look for things. Now, I share all that to say, when it comes to the type of photography that we're going to do, nothing will make you think more predictably than what aspect ratio you're going to shoot in. That's probably the last thing you're thinking about though, because on the front end, we don't really have to think about that much anymore because digital photography has got so many megapixels today that we can basically crop into any aspect ratio we want. But historically, especially regarding film, there are these aspect ratios that make you just see things a little differently through that viewfinder. And when you start to see things a little differently, or you at least like plan to see things a little differently, it really does stretch you creatively in a way that you might not be stretching yourself. So that's really what I want to talk about today, is how I'm determining on the front end what aspect ratio I'm going to shoot in, or at least what aspect ratio I'm going to take out to shoot with, and how that's going to affect the compositions that I'm getting and affect what I'm looking for when I'm being spontaneous. Do you see why I've been struggling with this topic, just making this video today? And if you're still watching at this point, I just want to say thank you. Thank you for sticking it out this far. And if this is your first time here, my name is Dave. I'm a photographer and filmmaker from the Bay Area of California. And even though the world is absolutely insane, I truly hope that you are watching this from a place of peace in your life. I hope to educate and empower you with information on this channel, so be sure to subscribe if that resonates with you. And if you reach out or comment, DM, whatever, I always try to respond because community comes first, so be sure to join the community at the links below, subscribe, and follow along. Let's start off by talking about the most common format that has survived today, 35mm, which is also the equivalent of a full-frame digital camera, aspect ratio 3:2. There's good reason that this 3:2 format has survived the way it has. I mean, this is honestly what I believe most people think about when they think about photography. It's a little wider than it is tall. It's perfect for, giving that subject, but also giving a little more information. It's a great visual storytelling aspect ratio because, we just kind of see things as they are in real life. And I'm not talking about like the lens you're using in focal length. I mean, just like if I'm right now standing here looking at my camera, I can also see my second set over here, which is my desk and my lighting. And then I can see my monitor on my right. Even while looking here, it's because I see nice and wide. I think that also, given that most of life is happening on a horizontal plane, 3-2 feels really natural. I mean, if we go up, we just get air and sky, and down, we get the ground. And so even if we can see nice and curved up and down, we don't have information all over the place up and down. So all the information of interest comes kind of left and right, which is why 3-2 just feels great. And, you get into filmmaking and you start getting even wider, especially if you go into anamorphic and you're getting that like 1.5 squeeze. I'm new to anamorphic, right? I made a video recently in the desert on anamorphic lenses, so check that out. I'm gonna link it right above. But the point I'm making is that there's something about the 3-2 format that just works. It works in every full frame camera and it works in film cameras. There's so many options out there. So then on the front end, for me, the Leica M6, which is my 3.2 camera on film, and the M11, which is my 3.2 camera on digital, the role they're going to play is really, it's like my everyday camera. It's the camera that I'm always going to just go out and shoot with and be happy with. And that's especially true on the M11 because of the high resolution. It can end up being any crop that I want. I even shoot the M11 a lot of times in tandem with my medium format cameras because I can give it the same crop and see how that's going to play out when I'm doing a collection of work. The photos you're seeing right now are from me, but then there's also some photos that were from our group on our meetup during the desert. All these guys are shooting the 3:2 aspect ratio on their full frame cameras because it just works, whether you're capturing good scenery or everyone hanging out and doing their thing, other people. I mean, 35, that format, that 3:2 format, it just works. And so I will always travel or go out and shoot with a 3:2 camera. Even if the goal is medium format. Like last summer, I was out working on a project on the Northern Plains, and that project is like 90% medium format. However, guess what? I always had the 35, the 3.2 with me as well, because there really isn't anything it cannot capture well. But where my brain really starts to get challenged is when I get into different aspect ratios. And I've got a few things I want to show you here. So I think my all-time favorite medium format camera is a Rolleiflex. Now, I've had a Rolleiflex for a very long time. This specific one I've had for about a year, but prior to this one, I had the 3.5 for many, many years. And I've always loved just how small, portable, light this thing is. I also like the experience of shooting waist level with this viewfinder on the top. I've made a video about this camera. I'll link it above. But this is a 1:1 aspect ratio, which means it's a square. Now, my Hasselblad is also a square, this camera here. This is another really great classic camera. I mean, it's got like the most iconic shutter of any camera. Want to hear it? It's beautiful. Here he goes. Man, it's just a beautiful sound. And if we were to compare the size of the negative from, say, like a 35 millimeter, this doesn't have any, oh, this does have film in it. I'm very glad I did not open it up. But I mean, you can get the idea, like a full frame sensor to a square, which is what's in the Rolleiflex, but here you can visually see it really clearly on this Hasselblad because of the dark slide. This is the size of the negative that I'm shooting on when it's in this camera or this camera. And this is a 1:1, this is a square, and I honestly feel like shooting square is a mental challenge for me. But it's a challenge that I love, and I really do love it. When I'm shooting that square aspect ratio, I really feel like what I'm looking for is balance. Balance in terms of left, right, up, and down. I don't have that extra width. It's truly just like completely balanced on all sides. There's something about the 1:1 aspect ratio that just to me feels really timeless, and that might be just because of how I associate history with that film aspect. I think it's an absolute beautiful aspect ratio for portraits. And again, I just really feel like that goes back to that balance thing. Now, when I'm planning to go shoot something that there's going to be mixed geometry with, I tend to want to bring a square camera. Whether it's the Rolleiflex or the Hasselblad, one of those is going to come with me if I'm going somewhere where I know there's going to be mixed geometry. Now, if it's like a pretty empty scene, meaning that like I'm shooting at the beach, right? And I've got a horizon that is level and I've got a big empty sky and I've got a big empty foreground, I'm not going to bring a 1:1 because I don't feel like that's going to serve me well. But like when I'm out doing something And I'm going to be in a spot where there might be some curve as well as straight lines. And that's what I mean by mixed geometry. A good example of mixed geometry would be this photo here, because you've got this pickup truck, then you've got the power lines and the poles, and then you've got the wheelbarrow, like you've got grass. You just have a lot of mixed shapes. And I feel like this type of photo works really well with mixed geometry. But if we were to say compare it to something like this one didn't work as well because it's too linear. There's a big empty foreground, a big empty sky, and only a strip of information. And something like that just feels better, I think, on a 3x2 instead of a 1x1. And before we get any further, just let me take a moment and tell you about the Grand Teton workshop that'll be happening this fall. I'm a big believer in building community. In fact, I just got back a few weeks ago from a meetup out in the desert in California on the east side of the Sierras. We had an awesome group that came out. There were 12 of us total, great guys making great photos. And I encourage you to check their work out. They're all linked below just in a big old line because I wanted to share who they were because they have incredible images. There's something about community in photography that is so good for the soul and good for us as creatives. And so one way you can experience that is just to come to different meetups or workshops or photo walks. I try to offer all those things, but the big one this year is going to be a workshop in Grand Teton, all focused on storytelling. There's a link below. You can read all that info and find out if it would be something that you might enjoy coming to. And if you have any questions about the workshop or any of the logistics about what we're going to cover in those things, just hit me up and I'm happy to get back to you. And I hope to see you there. Hope you can make it out. So there's limited spots. I think we're down to only a handful of spots left. Link is below. All that info is there. Hit it up. Let me know if you have any questions. And let's get back to talking about all these different aspect ratios. And then we can continue to push that by getting something like a 6x7, which is what this is. This is not a 6x6. This is a 6x7. So it's just a little wider than it is tall. This crop is a 4x5 crop, which is the Instagram crop, or at least the old school Instagram crop from back in my day. The 4.5 is super iconic. And honestly, if you're going to go vertical, I think the 4.5 is better than the 3.2, which I think when you go vertical, it's 2.3. And pardon me if I'm getting all these wrong. You get what I'm saying. When we flip that full frame vertical, I think we have too much information top and bottom. And again, it just goes back to what I said earlier about like having air above us and ground below us. All the information is right and left. And there's something about this format here when we shoot it vertical, and this is the back from my RB67, which allows me to turn this vertical. When we shoot vertical 6.7, this is a very, very pleasing vertical look. If I had to choose vertical and I knew that I was going to go out and do some vertical photography, I would probably want to bring this camera if it didn't weigh 1,000 pounds. Now, one day I might have a portable 6x7, but this camera, this format here, and shooting a vertical like this, it doesn't get much better than this. And so, again, like what I'm saying is on the front end, as we're thinking about what we're going to capture and we're dialing in our vision so we can be as intentional as possible, that 6.7 format is beautiful and vertical. Now, there's one other format I didn't mention. I'm going to bring it up real quick. This is a 6.45, which is also medium format. So our medium formats are from smallest to largest, 6.45, 1x1, which is a 6.6, and then 6.7 or a 4.5. This 6.45 is certainly bigger than a 35, and it has kind of the same vibe though. And so for me, I don't use it a ton because I'm never really in a scenario where I want to shoot this size and feel like that this is more convenient than this. And so this is why I don't shoot 6.45 that often. I know there's some fantastic 6.45 cameras out there and photographers that use 6.45, and good for them. It does exist. And I do have it because it's part of my RB67 kit, but it's just not one I use a lot. Now, maybe if I had a more portable 6.45, I would reconsider what I'm saying, but just know that it does exist. But for me, again, the 3.2 is just more convenient than the 6.45 format. Now, we hit the threshold of digital photography way back because once we get out of the full frame 3:2 aspect ratio, we get up to that 4:3 aspect ratio, which is what's in the Fuji GFX line or the Hasselblad X2D line. But honestly, guys, They call that medium format, but I'm going to push back and say I don't think it's medium format. I just think it's a really high resolution digital camera because that sensor is not even as big as this. And I could be wrong here, and please don't kill me in the comments. But I think I wrestle with the question here. Is medium format, is it a look or is it resolution? Or maybe it's both. I'm curious to know what you think. But when I think about medium format, I'm thinking about these different aspect ratios and how I plan to use them. And when I'm thinking about full frame or 3x2 and, normal photography, everyday stuff, I'm thinking about my Leica M6 and my Leica M11. Now I'm trying to be really intentional with my photography this year, more so than I've ever been. Big part of that is because I'm shooting a lot of film this year, and film's expensive, which we all know that. There's a billion videos complaining about the price of film, but film makes me have to be intentional at new levels so I'm not wasting my shots. But I want to take that same mentality and apply it to digital as well, just to challenge myself to become a better photographer. So this aspect ratio conversation has really become important as I think about what I am doing and where I'm going and what I plan to get. And of course, like I said, leaving that room between intentionality and flexibility. Now, if we were to keep going into large format, we get the true 4x5, we get the true 8x10, and those are incredible. I don't do that photography, but there are some incredible photographers that do that are making work that is completely insane. In fact, many of my photo books were taking on large format because it just looks so good and so iconic. But with these super accessible formats here, whether you get a medium format camera or a full frame camera, you probably already have one or the other or both or multiple like I do. Let me encourage you to just figure out your level of intentionality and go out there and make your best work. I hope you found this video helpful, and I apologize if it was a little rambly. Like I said, I had a hard time wrapping my head around this one, but I definitely wanted to make it. So yeah, here we are. If you've got thoughts, I would love to hear them. I really love to learn just as much as I love to talk. And so please share your thoughts below and let's have conversations around it. And a great place to continue having conversations like this is in the Very Good Discord. It's all linked below with all the other links, so be sure to check that stuff out. And as always, thank you guys for watching, and I will see you next time.